I would like to call to order the Public Works Zoning Committee meeting to order at this time. President on the committee, myself, Mr. Lawson, Mr. Silver in his absence, other members of the council present, the administration. Item number 1 is a resolution authorizing the city to state their intention to review the city's recycling program as set forth by LAC 33-7, 103-07, book item 15. Ms. Wilson.
My name is Ann Wilson. I'm the Superintendent of Environmental Services for the City of Alexandria. And Department of Environmental Quality regulations require that municipalities submit in April of each year a summary of their recycling efforts for the previous calendar year. We submitted that report on time and summarized our efforts on our drop-off recycling locations, mulch giveaway, household hazardous waste collection day, Christmas tree recycling, and different efforts throughout the city of Alexandria to reduce, reuse, and recycle. We operate under a budget from the sanitation department, and we also rely on Keep Cenla Beautiful and their recycling efforts. They coordinate the telephone book recycling throughout Rapides Parish. So those totals are put together and submitted to DEQ each year. The regulatory agency requires that our city councils, our governing body, reviews the report and passes a resolution saying that they review the report and support the efforts of the city in order to reduce, reuse, and recycle. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have on the specifics of the report.
Mr. Fowler.
I'd just like to congratulate you and your group on the continuing operation of the hazardous waste and so forth. Well, I don't remember exactly what you call it, but I know that each year that particular event has grown and grown and has been well participated in by the citizens of Alexandria, and I applaud you for a job well done.
Well, thank you. I'd like to call to our attention that Keep Cenla Beautiful has written a grant to the Department of Environmental Quality to do an additional collection day for this year. And it will be held in the Ball Pineville area because it had to be a new program, an expanded aspect of the program. And so $42,000 grant was awarded to Keep Cenla Beautiful. And we also collected the school lab waste from 7 area schools in Rapides Parish as part of that grant. So that material was properly disposed of, manifested off-site at no cost to the school board and to also Menard High School, a private high school in our area. So our citizens will be able to utilize the Ball Pineville Collection Day in the fall of the year, and that should relieve some of the pressure on our Collection Day, which is always held the 3rd Saturday in May. So it's a good program, and we saw that funds were available through fines and penalties for an oil company in South Louisiana. We applied for that funding and was awarded the grant in November. But it's always a reimbursement grant, so the cash flow is critical to that small organization so that we can expend those dollars and then ask for reimbursement through DEQ.
Okay, we've heard from Ms. Wilson, her report based on the resolution, information in regards to recycling. Can we get a motion? And I'll second it, that we accept that report. A second. Thank you, Ms. Wilson, for your report. Item number 2, the administration asked for this item to be delayed, which was to consider final adoption of an ordinance authorizing the mayor to accept the low bid submitted for the Alexandria Zoo.
Mr. Johnson, I think we had sent that down from staff yesterday, and since then they have had the opportunity to meet with all of the staff on that, and I think they maybe have the ability to present on it today.
Okay.
Proceed on that.
Okay, we'll hear from you at this time.
Actually, that is the Zoo Kitchen project. We call it the Zoo Kitchen, but it would be more appropriately referred to as the commissary. It includes the food preparation area as well as the employee lockers and showers. It's a 2,400 square foot building built of cinder blocks with a concrete floor, and it's very necessary. We were quite disappointed when the bids came in over budget, and that's why we had delayed the matter to look into whether we should consider rebidding the project or not. But after having met with the architect on the project, Mr. Perry Watson, who's here to speak with you today, and Les Witt, as well as David Crutchfield, the finance director, we have agreed that we should proceed with the project because it'll never be cheaper than it is today to steal Mr. Watson's term. And so we want to proceed with that. I have the plans here if you'd like to look at them, and Les Witt and Mr. Perry Watson are here to answer your questions.
And it's not just a zoo kitchen, that's what kind of think through all of us and all of you.
Okay, comments at this time? Questions from the council?
Do you have any questions? The architect can answer them.
I think that it's been thoroughly reviewed by administration and our folks out at the zoo. And if we have to have it, and it's the only way we can do it, we better go ahead and do it now.
I agree, and that is our recommendation with the unstable but yet skyrocketing prices of steel and copper and other mechanical components and building materials. We just think it needs to move forward.
Okay, we've heard from the administration. If no further questions, can we get moved and second? And that it be recommended to the full council. Item number 3 is to consider final adoption of an ordinance annexing 24.2397 acres of property to New York Avenue and Interstate 49 in sections 36 and 40 of T3N R1W Southwestern Land District. Book item number 34. At this time, we hear from the administration.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. We have present Brian Butler, who is the local engineer on the project, and Mr. David Strange, who is one of the developers, and I'd like for them to speak to you first about their request for annexation, and then the administration will respond.
Good afternoon. I'm David Strange here on behalf of the development, and this is Brian Butler with Ballard Engineering. The next 3 items on the agenda are interrelated in that the annexation of the 24 acres, upon approval of that annexation, will then be subdivided into creating the 2 subdivisions, and the subdivision plats are also up for approval. So if I can address all 3 of the issues at the same time, that will probably hurry this all along.
Is it
Yes,
okay,
sir.
Ms. Lawson? Okay.
What I would like to do is,
I can hand you do y'all all have an annexation or a copy of the corporate limits and the location of the project?
You have a copy of that? Oh, yes, in the book.
Reduced version of the book. So, I was just telling my colleagues it's a smaller version of the book.
It's contiguous to
In this area, New York Avenue and MacArthur Drive, and then I-49, and Lawson Heights is on the other side of the interstate there.
the proposed annexation and subdivisions, from a technical standpoint first, as it relates to the annexation of the 24 acres, we believe that it complies with all the requisite ordinances of the city of Alexandria for annexation, and that the technical aspects as they relate to the subdivision plats have gone through RAPC, STAR, with no comments during that time that have met the technical review standards. And so from a technical standpoint, we feel that as it relates to ordinances and the dictates legally, that the annexation proceeding as well as the subdivision plats comply with all the land development ordinances. Then from a philosophical standpoint, it's the types of housing that we intend to build. The land has been purchased. The permits are in the process of being reviewed by the Public Works Department of the City of Alexandria. We are ready to proceed once we get approval of the subdivision site plans and approval of our annexation from the city. We could commence construction in weeks and go ahead and have much-needed housing on the ground within a year thereafter. We've had some meetings with the city administration. I've had some meetings with Councilman Smith, who supports these projects. And we could have the housing done, like I said, within the year. What led us to this market was an insatiable market demand for workforce housing within the city of Alexandria. Our own market studies that we had done resulted in a demand of showing a shortage in the Alexandria market of about 3,000 workforce houses. These developments will put less than 100 houses on the ground. That satisfies less than 2% of the demand. Here's Councilman Smith now. The way that the incentives to developers are allocated are based upon census data and statistics from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. The census data obviously is decennial data every 10 years. So it takes a long time for those numbers kind of to work through a formula to determine which of our municipalities, based upon these formularies, are most in need of workforce housing. That decision was made several years back and finally works its way down to the state level, where our state agency allocates tax incentives for developments like this. Once these developments are complete, like I say, there'll still be 97, 98% unmet demand in workforce housing in the city of Alexandria. It'll be 10 years again before this issue is really reviewed from a federal policy-making level so that tax incentives can be allocated again and the needs of Alexandria addressed. So it's an opportunity now to get much-needed housing, and the opportunity will not come around again anytime soon. These things tend to be very cyclical. There have been some other developments awarded tax incentives here recently, and I think that's why there's been a little bit of influx, is because of this census data that determined that a little while back. The other thing from a philosophical standpoint is that the cost of these developments is in excess of $15 million. It will generate $100,000 or more on an annual basis in ad valorem taxes for the city. We're committed to using local labor and suppliers. Like I said, we've bought the land, we've had the engineering and the architectural work done. We are committed to these developments and to the citizens of Alexandria. And lastly, despite what market studies, which, this is the one for one of the developments, it's a thick piece of paper, and but it's more than paper, that I even made some follow-up phone calls to some of the local apartment complexes and things like that today, and they're all at 100% occupancy with sufficient demand, and the comparable rents are somewhere around $1 a square foot. So you equate that to a 3-bedroom apartment, that rents $1,000 a month for a family who would otherwise qualify to live in a brand new house, and I'll show you a second picture of the houses that we build, and that rents about $600 a month. So that family just got a nicer house instead of an apartment complex, a yard for their child to play in, and $400 additional of disposable income to pay for gas and groceries. These developments are really a gift for a community. Lastly, I'll just show you a picture of one that has recently, 2 pictures actually have been completed. And you can see the entranceway, and actually when you come in, this is precisely one of the designs that's being used here in the city. It's got a community center when you come in, and then once you get internally in the development, the 4-bedroom floor plans, and they have garages, and they're all very well maintained.
Are these areas gated like what you have in that picture? Are they gated?
Some are, some aren't. We have not made a determination yet as to whether or not this particular development will be gated. It ends up being a determination. But these streets on ours are going to be private streets, privately maintained. So I suspect in the end, when all that gets worked out, we will gate it and give key code access.
It will be private streets?
Yes.
So you're not looking for any respond?
No, sir.
You're talking about commercial 5-acre?
And there's an additional 5-acre tract that lies in between these two neighborhoods that has been reserved so that we can use that in the future as the neighborhoods grow and you know, people begin to live there, that we can do more of a planned unit type development where we can create some commercial offices and things of that nature. So it would be more of a planned
Let me
unit.
ask a couple of questions. Is it, as I look at the map, it is contiguous to the city.
Yes, sir.
In the review by our fire and police, how will it affect the city from that standpoint?
Mr. Fowler, I can answer those questions for you. We applied our annexation policy to this request, as we always do, and as you recall, the first question we ask is, how does this affect public safety, utilities, and public services? And because this property is adjacent to city limits already, there is no negative effect on our ability to perform the public safety functions of fire and police, and it fits into our plan with that. With regard to utilities, this development will be on city electricity. It's been approved for city sewer. The developer will have to put in a lift station, I understand, to get the sewer to our line, which is a cost that they will absorb. And they will also, they will have private streets, so we won't be maintaining their streets. And because it's a private development, we don't have to provide sanitation services. So Public Works really is sort of out of the loop on this, but as far as public safety, we can provide those functions without a negative effect to our ability to do so.
We provide public safety to a gated community?
If it's gated, that's something, actually, I was not aware that it was going to be gated until now, because we are not typically providing much service in those regions, but we do have cross gates and left bank. Left bank is not in the city, cross gates is. I'm not sure.
I think the gated part causes much trepidation.
It does, and that's something that will have to be reviewed. I don't think that's on the,
And
that's
it's
not on
our
the,
submission. It's just something that, as you go down the road, you work with administration, if this thing's for whatever reason, we're ever asked to do, it's something that we certainly can do, but.
So you would remove the gated criteria if you would want
Oh,
public
it's
safety?
not. As it is currently submitted, it is not gated.
Okay.
Therefore, that photograph, I guess,
All right,
may be
man.
misrepresented.
I was going to say
Roosevelt
that
caused all of
that
this. You should have asked that
planning,
question.
planning has approved the subdivision plats and is prepared to issue the permits if this project moves forward, and we were not aware that there would be any gated access.
Ms. Bright, can you come to the podium, please, if you'd like to state a question?
Okay, Sandra Bright, and I'm from Lower Third, and I have two questions. The first one, since I don't know exactly where it's going to be located, I'm trying for them to give me some type of landmarks. Is this close to the Garden Memory Cemetery?
Lawson Heights. You know where
Across the
Lawson
highway
Heights
from
is?
Lawson Heights.
I've seen it from the highway, but I haven't been down
That's on Eddie Williams.
Eddie Williams.
They drive by Gilchrist.
Inglewood area.
So right before you get that way, if you know where Colonel Jones and you should know where.
And the reason why I was asking, because when you said I-49, I was trying to see, was it going to be close to I-49 or in between a place where the drainage problem where the ground is low? Because if we looked at the drainage problem with Lawson Heights and whatever else, how is this going to affect that area?
Engineering,
You have to go above the flood level. Anyway, you build now, you got to go 18 inches above the flood level.
Well, I thought that area was all in the floodplain anyway, they
Well,
said.
Ms. Bright, in the review performed by planning, the engineering department does review the drainage plans, and they've addressed all of the issues. The city engineer is here if you'd like to ask any further questions on that. There's also a map behind you that might give you a better idea where the property is located.
And the second question, on these houses, are they for homeowner, or they rent to own, or just what, are they a HUD, or
They're rental housing.
based on income, or what?
Area median income, which is 40, just went up in Alexandria, it's 45.9.
But this is not like housing assistance, or,
No, it's not Section 8 or anything.
but this is ownership,
It's
it's rental?
Yes, ma'am.
Not went on in 15
No,
years?
No, ma'am.
And the reason it's rental is because HUD performed a survey and identified a very severe need for rental housing here in this area.
Okay, any other questions, Mr. Smith?
I'd like to say, the chief is here, but we went in a meeting with the Soundtown Woodside neighborhood group last night, and one of the police officers was there. In these new neighborhoods like Riverbend and all of them, we have less crime. You have less police going into these new areas than you have in the old area. And statistics show that the crime rate is down in those neighborhoods. Reb was in that meeting, and he lives over there across Willie Glenn. And we were in that meeting last night, but you have, the statistics state that we have less crime in those new subdivisions. And let me say something to you that, I was talking to Mr. Lawson. A lot of people are ready to get out of some of these houses that have been built 40, 50 years ago where they rent. You know, they got some people saying, I would just like to go in and rent, intend to buy, get into a brick home or something before I leave, you know, I leave this way. Am I right, Mr. Lawson? Have you heard? Yeah, and they just want an opportunity to better themselves. And as you go to these neighborhoods, you see where they are building playgrounds in there. Some of them is going for daycare. We're working right now with Reverend Lionel Smith, and he's getting ready to do some development. And over there by, we got to do some with Booker Street and the extension of Aaron Street back over that way. So, and we need those houses. And I'm gonna say something else I was telling them last night, is that when I first got on the council, I was like in the Soundtown Woodside area in the Cajun Village. And as Mr. Hobbs and all of us know, when the census came, now people start moving out. And to get 9,000 people, I'm on this side of I-49, all the way down Bolton Avenue to Magnolia Street and back to Upper 3rd. And that showed where people was moving out the neighborhood compared 20 years ago when we had that magnitude of people. I didn't even cross Broadway then. But now, I mean, people moved out because some of them wanted to do better. So now we're moving back into the neighborhood, which is good. We're doing infield. So I just wanted to bring that before the council.
If there's nothing else concerning these three items, no further questions, we need to move forward with the meeting at this time. We've heard from items 3, 4, and 5. Can we get a motion? And I seconded that we move forward with these items and recommend it to the full council.
Can we do that in local, yes, I'm asking legal counsel, or do we have to take each item individually?
Do we need to take them individually? We have to legal.
Annexation before adopted.
take the annexation before you
Adopted.
You need to do both of them operate individually.
we're on staff first. I move, item number 3.
Okay, second, recommended to the full council. Item number
4.
Item number 4.
Move.
Second, recommended to the full council.
I move on 5.
Seconded and recommended to the full council. Okay, moving forward on the agenda, item number 6 is to consider final adoption of an ordinance annexing Hathaway Crossing subdivision, book item number 37. Second.
Would there be some discussion on that?
Discussion. Administration at this time.
We've talked about this annexation before, and unfortunately, unlike the one that was just considered, this one is not being recommended by the administration because it creates an island, and it is not contiguous to any city limits, city limit boundaries at this time. This is the property that's being requested, and I see Mr. Belton is here, and actually I'd rather if Mr. Belton would present his case to you, and then we'll respond.
Okay, Mr. Belton, I know you just walked in. Would you like to come forward at this time?
Thank you very much. Apologize for being late. I assumed that the item placed on the agenda was before committee, and it would go straight to the council. So I apologize. But having said that, and I'm not sure what the concerns might be, but we propose a affordable housing development off of England Air Park, sometimes on or about 2006. We had a resolution from the council where we were competing for a particular set of resources offered by the state in conjunction with the Union Tank Car project. The governor at that time indicated that it was a high priority. Thus, Louisiana Housing Finance Agency provided resources specifically for competition to provide housing in conjunction with the Union Tank Car project. Having said that, we were successful. We, I guess, were the winning competitor, and as a result of that, since that time, we had initiated both the support of the parish, and at that time, the parish indicated that they too supported the affordable housing project as well as the annexation into the city of Alexandria. Since that time, in 2006 rather, that was 2005, 2006, we've had another resolution passed by this council in support of the annexation as well as in support of the development. Again, re-urging the support that is required from local government as a result of the resources being made available through the state of Louisiana. I'm here today because we met the requirements and have satisfied the requirements of the Star Commission. Those requirements haven't been satisfied, predicated upon being annexed into the city of Alexandria. We ask and would encourage you to continue the commitment previously held or had by the previous council and the previous administration. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Is this project contiguous to the city?
I'm sorry.
Is this project contiguous to the city?
The project is contiguous, not contiguous. It's not contiguous. We are approximately, I'll estimate, maybe 100 yards from the city. We have proposed, as we have done over the course of the month, that if that is a requirement, we could satisfy that requirement. Having said that, we also have analyzed previous, I guess, annexation requirements, annexations of the city, and in the previous annexations of the city, we found that previous administrations have afforded an opportunity for annexation. On the basis of that, on the basis that we have done what I call the footwork, we have done the preliminary, I guess, interaction between the council, between the previous administration, between the state of Louisiana, and today we are now poised to go forward with the development.
Why would it be such a factor for it to be within the city since it's not contiguous when Union Tank Car is neither in the city?
Well, if you remember, the Union Tank Car proposition was a parish proposition that impacted the city of Alexandria, that provided economic development, that provided economic incentives for the city of Alexandria, and also encouraged the city to move forward and support the project. Your question, why into the city of Alexandria? It's just that the history of this initiative goes back 2005, where it's always been thought of, it's always been presented as a annexation project, both from the parish standpoint in terms of having cooperative endeavor agreements with the parish. If needed, they support it. We have a resolution from the parish as well as the city. So to that extent, we're now in 2008. We hope that at this time in 2008, we can go forward with the project.
Any questions, comments?
Thank you, Councilman. You don't have a
Well,
question?
the administration would like to respond. And once again, we look at this and apply the annexation policy of this administration. We look at public safety, utilities, and services. Then we look at planning trends and whether this fits within our master plan for the city, and then finally aesthetics. When looking at the public safety factor, this property, as I mentioned before, is not contiguous to any city limits, any boundaries that presently exist. The property is located on England Drive next to North Bayou Rapids Elementary School, which is right here. This is Plantation Drive. This red line is England. Here's Highway 1, and this is Air Base Road. So to annex this property in would create a pocket or an island. Fire would more appropriately be served by Fire District Number 2, which is located right here near England Air Park. The closest fire station we have to this property is all the way over on Rapides Avenue. We would have quite an extended period of time before we could respond to a fire. Our response would be delayed, and Fire District Number 2 would certainly be there and be more appropriately serving this property. As far as police, once again, we would have delayed response because our police would be dispatched from here and would have to go out England Drive to reach the property. Again, their public safety for police would be more appropriately served by the parish, the sheriff's department, which already patrols this area. In addition, when talking about fire, next week the Fire Insurance Rating Commission will be here to do our fire insurance rating and to bring in property such as this would have a detrimental or negative effect on our fire insurance rating. With regard to utilities, the proposed project would not be served by city sewer, but would be served by Sewer District Number 1, which also serves Kelly Land, which is not a city property. And electric service would not be provided by the city as well. Water is available. We do have water out there, and water could be purchased through the city. We could serve the water. With regard to public works, no other properties in the vicinity receive public works services such as sanitation. The properties that are located on England Drive don't have sanitation services, neither do most of those along Highway 1. We would not be able to provide bus service to this development. It's a private development, so we would not be providing street maintenance and drainage maintenance. As far as the ad valorem tax, we calculate that to be about $21,200 annually. And in addition, the developer is seeking assistance from us, from the city, in the form of infrastructure improvements, and has requested about $500,000 in infrastructure to be placed in the development, in the private development. When you look at that $500,000, we're not deriving any revenue from utilities, and we're receiving maybe $20,000 a year from ad valorem taxes. It would take a long time to recoup the $500,000, even assuming that we could make that kind of investment for our private development.
Does that have any
under-
Article 7 connotations?
Absolutely, it does. And we have 8 other tax credit developments that have come into the city. We have River Bend, Phase 1, 2, and 3. We have Silverleaf, Pin Oak, England Drive subdivision, Pecan Grove North, and then, of course, Carlisle and Stratford Place that were presented today. And then, not any of those other developers have requested those kind of incentives. Also, to bring in this property, to annex a piece of property that would form a pocket or an island, as I mentioned in January when we discussed this in council, that annexation would subject us to a challenge by either the parish or citizens under Louisiana Revised Statute 33-174. And courts, when looking at annexations in a challenge such as that, look at the reasonableness of the annexation. And to determine the reasonableness of the annexation, they look at the benefits to both the municipality and to the property owners of the property that's annexed. In this case, there's no real advantage to the property owner that's being annexed other than the requested incentive. He's not receiving city services because it's a private development. There's no sanitation services. We can't provide bus service. We don't maintain the streets. And he's not going to be receiving city utilities. There's no advantage to the city to annex this property. It's a serious stretch on our fire and police, and in fact creates liability for us because of the delayed response time to get out there. And it would have a negative effect on our fire insurance rating. And there's no revenue generated from utility services. When we bring in areas and we provide utilities, then we're generating some revenue, and that would not be the case here. The annexation is simply contrary to good planning practices and contrary to this administration's policy on annexation. It creates erratic, non-compact, irregular, and non-contiguous city boundaries and does not pass the reasonable test. And for those reasons, the administration is opposed to the annexation.
Could I ask,
I have one minute.
Mr. Chairman.
I have Ms. Underwood and Mr. Marshall. We'll do this in order, then we need to soon wrap up because time is important.
I got one too.
Okay, then,
I got some questions.
okay.
I got one big question.
I want to say thank you to Ms. Kay here. She did a very good presentation, but from an ordinary person that's over there 7 days a week, almost 24/7, more than I am in my own home on Jackson Street, it took me 7 weeks to get 3 alleys cut. It's not the city's fault, it's just that they're overworked, okay? I have to agree with Ms. Michelle's and the administration's policy and stance on this, because dealing with this area 7 days a week, 24/7 like I do, is going to really stretch our budget. Also, gentlemen, we need to remember that our $4 million in sales tax may be lost. That hasn't been settled with the police jury yet, has it? Okay, I've been kind of out of things the last couple of weeks. But it's really going to be a stretch in that area. If you go down Enterprise, we have ditches that need to be filled with culverts. The property owners, it's on city property. We just have a lot of problems in that area that our workers cannot handle now. Like I said, it took me 7 weeks to get 3 alleys cut that my family has cut for 20 years.
Okay, at this time, we hear from Mr. Marshall, then Mr. Lawson, then Mr. Fowler, then we need to wrap this committee up.
Ms. McGill, can I get you to hold your map up again? My question now stems that the city limits far exceeds that particular portion where you're saying that it stretches the public safety side. When the city limits of Alexandria goes all the way down to St. Mary's School, it surpassed that particular area by West Calhoun subdivision street that goes over that, that's in the city limits. If you look on a straight line, all of it's just a pocket, and I agree. But if 100 yards or so was there, and the developer is willing to acquire that extra 100 yards of property to make it contiguous to the city limits, I don't see the problem. We have pockets back here in the back behind the housing authority and the like throughout. We got pockets all over that the city is not being maintained. And Ms. Underwood, Enterprise Road is in the fast track, and it's being taken care of, and it will be resurfaced and redone. I've listened to you, Ms. Underwood.
I want a point of order in this meeting.
I've listened to you. This, I think we ought to go on with it. It was done in the prior administration. I agree that if it was something that was new, if it was a new subdivision, brand new, that there was but this was something that this council voted on and the past administration was agreeing with it. So I don't understand why not.
If I may respond, Mr. Johnson.
Let Mr. Fowler go ahead and ask a question, then you maybe can respond to
Sure.
both.
Well, actually, I wanted to ask Mr. Johnson a question, and if you would elaborate on the possible Article 7 violations, I'd be concerned in that area.
Well, Mr. Fowler, you're right. Article 7, Section 14 prohibits donations of public funds. There are some exceptions to that, though. There are some provisions in the development law which allow municipalities, and they're not mandatory, they're permissible. They allow municipalities to provide reimbursements over a period of time for financing of public facilities. But those are cases where the developer has a development agreement in place with the city at the time. And of course, the city's free to negotiate that agreement, and there's no requirement that the city actually do a reimbursement. That's something that would come through negotiation. Mr. Belton is seeking almost $500,000 for various types of infrastructure, and the previous administration has never committed to making that kind of expenditure.
Mr. Lawson, then.
I guess we need to wrap up. Sorry to be very, kind of confused in that subdivision we just talked about, which I support wholeheartedly. The argument could be made to Fire District 2 is certainly close to that project. Fire District 2 certainly close to this. If Mr. Belton wants to make it contiguous, and that's the administration policy, let him make it contiguous. Let's just go forward. I don't understand the public donation piece when we've done for years. From bridges on to help subdivisions come along. We've paid for bridges, we've paid for lighting, we've paid additional fences right back of our golf course under this administration. So I don't understand how we paid for roads, we just paid for Walmart $700,000. So we have a beautiful Walmart, and I certainly supported that. And I'm not casting aspersions on anything, what I'm saying is we made a commitment. How was that resolution? Was it unanimous? How does the record reflect?
The resolution, it's resolution number 8190, 2007, and it says a resolution to support the potential annexation of Hideaway Crossing. And it also says, subject to the City of Alexandria Planning Office approval of the plans and specifications. And the planning office simply cannot approve the annexation of this property. And in response to what was said previously about the city limits extending out Highway 1 North and I-49, all I can say is that many years of poor planning does not make this right, and at some point we have to come back and make this right. We can't continue to throw pockets out there and be expected to have our fire and police provide services to those. The only way to make this annexation contiguous to the city limits is through a field, to buy a strip of land through a field. Our city police and our fire still have to drive out a highway or a roadway, England Drive, that is not a city street. This is not a city road. That's a state road.
I wouldn't quite finish it, but I'll let you finish.
Ms. Lawson, I just wanted to clarify, I walked in late, obviously. You made 3 examples of things that we've done. I just wanted for the record say this administration didn't do any of those 3 things. You brought up Walmart. We didn't give Walmart $700,000, and this council supported what happened there, and we've discussed that numerous times. We didn't give Walmart anything. The city received a benefit and value for what it did at Walmart. We didn't give away anything. We also talked about it at the time. This administration actually was still not really for that project. The council, it was my recollection, wanted to go forward, and we went forward. It started under another administration. This administration has never given away money on a bridge or any of the other examples you just gave. This violates our internal policy. It's a gross violation, to be honest with you, on our annexation policy. It represents the biggest departure from what we're trying to do. We're holding a seminar down the street in a few weeks on planning and proper planning and smart growth. It would violate any tenet of that by anybody there, and it is completely distinguishable from the Carlisle and Stratford items that you just saw for various reasons, including that Fire District Number 2 is really of no application to what the difference is here. This has the certification of a fire chief and police chief that it could affect our fire rating, that it isn't something that public safety meets. That alone should really almost end an inquiry into an annexation. There is no connection. It is a new, non-contiguous annexation. And it is not true that the city made a binding promise on this. A resolution is the expression of the legislative will. It is not enforceable in a court of law. And neither is a letter from the mayor saying, we'll do this if we can. The mayor could promise numerous things, and it's not binding in court, and this court's well aware of that. There was a case that went up involving our chief of police on retirement to the Supreme Court on the exact same issue, and that's not the case. A mayor can't make a promise by writing a letter. It has to be by an ordinance, and that didn't occur here.
How many houses are we anticipating in the new subdivision?
Sir,
How many houses are we anticipating?
90.
90. How many houses are we anticipating?
120.
Okay. So a difference of 30 houses would affect our fire rating with the relatively same distance?
No, sir.
And hear me out. I'm going to finish because I know we need to go too. And I'm hearing the argument about the police will be stretched. Our police department will be stretched. We have more police officers than we ever had in the history of the city. And anyone that follows the census knows that our population is less now than it was many years ago when we had fewer police officers. You go back to the 50s, the 60s,
Mr. Lawson, our
70s,
population is up.
Hear me out. I want you to hear me out because I'll let you speak. When you go back to the 70s, certainly when our population was larger than it was now, early 70s, late 60s, we had 2 per car. We still had as much area for the most part to cover. We made a commitment. He asked me to support this. I said I would support it. I agree. And I subscribe to a lot of things you're saying about the smart growth. But when you make a commitment, and I'm not making a commitment on the 500,000 that's being suggested, but I think this government has a method and you can utilize it. I think you utilized it before. If you disagree with this action, then you veto it. I don't think we need to beat it to death, but if he can make this contiguous, and in addition to that, you telling me our police are going to be stretched for an additional 130 households to the extent they're not going to be able to handle it. I just don't buy that.
Mr. Lawson, our policies don't occur. Our policies don't occur.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. We with fast track and everything else, I mean, you talk, and I'm going to finish with this one. It looks like none of these questions were raised on the Sowers issue. I didn't hear that. None of these questions are raised when other subdivisions were coming up. Nobody raised the questions about the fences behind the golf course. Now all of a sudden we have questions being raised. We made a commitment. I made a commitment. I think several on this council made a commitment based on a resolution, whether it was directly or indirectly. I think we need to exercise the rights that's given to the council, and you exercise the rights that's given to you as mayor.
I understand, but I think the public has a right to know all the facts. Number one, there was not a fence built by the city for a golf course in an untoward situation. Let's get this real clear for the public. The city felt as though, again, this was the previous administration, there was a liability issue. When we came on board, when you have a golf course the city owns, an idea which this administration would not have subscribed to doing, but was done before we got here, a golf course was built out there. Then you have an issue of the city property being protected from kids on four-wheelers to everything else. So the city entered into an agreement with the neighborhood that allowed the city to get a better fence for less money. In essence, a larger version of that same issue happened with regard to Walmart. So those issues are not comparable at all. Mr. Lawson, we're talking about our commitment to the citizens. You're talking about a commitment to a developer who doesn't live in Alexandria. My commitment is to all of you. And when you talk about stretching our infrastructure like this does, and you talk about losing your fire rating too, you're going to scream bloody murder about that one.
So you're certifying that we're going to lose. I want to make this clear. Is our fire chief certifying? I'm in the insurance business, that this additional 90 houses or 30 houses, are you telling me that's certifying and the police certifying that this city cannot accommodate that? Because I want to know how we're going to accommodate the expansion on the side.
Mr. Lawson, no person could ever certify what was going to happen in the future, or they wouldn't be in this business, certainly sitting with us. But I can tell you that this process is vetted out and happens objectively. No one from the administration calls all of the directors that serve and tells them, you will make this recommendation. They get a policy circulated and they sign off and say what each is.
So it's
then we have discussions.
It's conjecture then?
No, sir. Conjecture would be guessing. This is based on objective modeling and determinations. That's why we hire and confirm division directors, because they have expertise. They use their staff and look at it. But you're comparing a neighborhood on this map that's way out of the city to one that is contiguous right next to other developments, including Lawson Heights, which I assume might want to come into the city too, and probably should, right in that area. So there's an area where everything is touching, contiguous to the city. It's a place where growth is, whereas here there's an area where that's only connected by another bad planning decision done by this city years ago, which was to join a whole area outside the city by one roadway. This fails any objective planning method that I've seen in studying them pretty diligently for the last year and a half. This decision did. Adding insult to injury is this decision. We have committed and would love to help Mr. Belton take his idea. And he doesn't have a developer agreement in place. I'm not sure if he's got his tax credit sold or any of the things that you have. We have committed to you, and we have committed to him, that if we can get him to do what all of these other examples we're trying to push our infill development, we will do it, Mr. Lawson, including what he's not going to be able to probably get here, which is incentives that are lawful and able to be done under the SPARK program. That's our commitment to you. But I think making a decision tonight to allow an annexation without proof that the tax, all of those things are in place, is a poor planning decision that will come back to compound and haunt us more. And that's all we've been asking for.
And just one quick response as well. We are not opposed to the development. We are opposed to the annexation, and we have not seen any evidence, and I've talked to the Louisiana Housing Finance Authority, and we have not had any indication that the financing or the funding for this project is tied to the annexation. We cannot get any objective indication from anyone to tie the two together. The development can continue and can occur without being annexed. And when HUD does the studies to identify the needs for rental housing for moderate income families, they study it as a parish, as an area. It's not located, it's not a municipal issue.
Myron, that was done objectively. No one is trying to, in fact, it's the opposite. We'd like to work with, and we would like to push for some infill items, and we have not been successful in coming up with that. I have spoken to Mr. Belton about what could be done. The only reason to annex, to my mind, is for the incentives. That's the only reason. If you're getting CLECO service and you're getting all the other utilities, the reason to annex would be for that limitation. We don't know that we can do those incentives anyway.
I'll tell you what I would like to do. This discussion has gone on long enough. What I would like for you to do, Mr. Belton, based on what the mayor just stated, I would like for you to meet with the administration and Mr. Marshall, who's your district councilman, and come back in 2 weeks so we can finalize this, if this is okay with all parties involved, because...
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate that. We've been talking with the administration now for 6 months. We've delayed ourselves. I'm not suggesting that 2 weeks would make a difference. By no means. I would be willing to do that, but I do want to put on the public record that we have made a substantial effort to find consensus with the administration, and I think the mayor will concede that we've done that, and we've afforded a substantial amount of time. I will say this, though, that with respect to the services in that area, in terms of police protection and fire, I do have an indication that the development would not change the fire rating for the city from the parish. And I'd like to put that in the record, by the way. And in addition to that, we do have will service letters from various departments of city government indicating that they were prepared to serve the development. You have to remember that if we are to be successful, not only is this public body a body that we have to our partner in this development, but in addition to that, our financing, the syndicators, advisors, tax credits, the lenders, they will not finance this project without the ability to have real service, and that is electrical, that is water, that is gas, that is police, that is, so to that extent, I think we've done the things that we need to do, and if it's indeed an opportunity to build consensus over 2 weeks, I'll be happy to do it, but, we've tried.
And let me say this, I want to make it clear. I think that this policy is a good policy the administration has. I'm not casting aspersions on it. The problem that I'm going through right now is that I think you've incurred some costs based on what was perceived as a unanimous support from this body, and certainly from the previous administration. I understand and appreciate where we are now, and I think it's an obvious position for all of us, but I think the process ought to work. If the mayor vetoes it, then it's up to this body. If it passes to operate one way or another, I'm hoping that we have a meeting of the minds and can find some way to make this work, quite frankly.
Well, Mr. Lawson, we've gone through that before. You want to try to avoid vetoes and things of that nature. You want to try to build consensus. Will has indicated 2 weeks he doesn't think makes or breaks it.
I'll gladly rescind my motion.
If there are things we can do, I'm interested to see an endorsement by the Fire Protection District Number 2 on how they can assert that it won't affect our fire rating. I'll be anxious to see how a body outside of us can do that. I'm sure our chief will have something to say about another fire chief or another entity indicating it can assert that. I received that information not only from the fire chief, but from an engineer. We also were having a separate outside group look at it, and all of them agree that in looking at our plans, where we're relocating, that answers the question of how the differences in houses over at Stratford and Carlisle are compared to Will's development. It's all about where you're located. So just comparing the amount of people doesn't answer the question. It's where the development is that answers the question. And I think that's a big distinction to make here. Yes, it is a good policy, the annexation policy, and yes, this violates that. I do acknowledge Mr. Belton has worked very hard. He's been nothing but polite and professional in his dealings with us, and it is a tough situation, and so we'll take any opportunity.
The infrastructure commitments dollar-wise.
Well, it was done it was suggested as a percentage, but what Kay keeps telling me is it's still not tied to his funding. Where I'd left with Will, and my one major conversation with him was, I didn't want to violate a good annexation policy, knowing we were about to do seminars and all these things. I was wanting him to stay in the parish and look at other things we might do that helps him to stay in the parish unannexed. And I'll recommit and redouble my efforts on that. If there's a way to show Mr. Belton what I believe to be the case, which is he gains no benefit by being in the city and forcing us to set a precedent in a new administration that we don't want to break. We haven't broken it yet. And we'd like to keep our annexation policy in place. It is your right as a body